Oh, how I wish I could share a cup with Scott Rayo. When I started in coffee, I had books written by this coffee man named Scott Rayo, and this is a recent book of his, and I heard a rumor once that if you put the book up over your face and you said, he would appear. So we're going to put that to the test. I have 2 cups poured. Let's see if it works.
Hey, Lance. Nice to see you.
We have Scott Rayo in the house, and so today we're going to do a video over the evolution of filter 2.0 to filter 3.0. So if you're unfamiliar with that, it is kind of a more ergonomic and tasty way of making coffee, potentially in a commercial setting using an espresso machine. So I have Scott here today to talk about kind of the impetus for this type of extraction, the evolution that it has gone through over the past couple of years, and kind of what led him to it.
Sure. I think we've all had the experience of going to cafes and being a little bit frustrated by how long it might take to get a pour-over made. Mm-hmm. And I've always wanted a solution that produces extremely high-quality extractions at the push of a button for 1 cup at a time. Mm-hmm. And everybody, I think, at some point or other has looked at their espresso machine and said, how can I make filter coffee in this thing?
Definitely.
And we've all toyed with it, and it's always a disaster.
Yeah.
So I came up with this thing called Filter 2.0 a couple of years ago, which was just the idea of taking a very deep basket, let's say 25-gram basket, putting maybe 18 grams in it so that you can grind quite fine, putting a paper filter on the bottom and sometimes on the top, and brewing a concentrate using the espresso machine but at extremely low pressure so that you're not really making espresso.
Sure.
It's still filtered because there's no pressure, there's no crema, that kind of thing. So I was using the Decent, since the Decent can give you whatever pressure or flow you want at any time. And that was working out quite well, where I would brew, say, a 3-to-1 ratio, dilute it with hot water, and get to filter strength.
Yep.
And it was working well, but everything had to be just right to avoid astringency. And it was ultimately a little too difficult to do successfully often enough where there was very, almost no astringency, right?
So just to recap, so you started with filter 2.0, which was a more concentrated version with a high extraction, using an espresso machine over a minute and a half, something like that, in order to create a concentrate that was sans crema, in order to really push the clarity of the coffee, and the attempt was to avoid astringency.
Yes.
And then you would dilute it up to the size of a filter cup of coffee.
Sure, and you get to a 1.4 strength or something like that. And sometimes it was great. Too often it was astringent, and I thought, okay, this is too challenging for it to be adopted regularly. Now, interestingly, I still use Filter 2.0 at home for decaf.
Oh, that is
because decaf has virtually no astringency ever.
Okay.
And because of that, you not only will not get astringency, so you've succeeded there, but as we all know, with decaf, if you do a V60 or something else, you have to grind quite a bit coarser than you do with regular, because decaf produces so many fines. It clogs filters so easily. But with the Filter 2.0, since you do have a little bit of pressure available to you, you will never have this filter clogging problem. And usually we're used to decaf extractions of, say, 19 or 20%, something on the lower side.
Yeah.
And with the Filter 2.0, I can go up to, say, 24, 25% and get a really delicious cup using the grounds really efficiently in decaf, and with Filter 2.0 never end up with astringency.
Wow.
And that's great too, because decaf's one of those things, no one's going to batch brew decaf, something like that, and it's pretty hard to find a single cup decaf out there that's any good, but using the machine with that method, you always get a really good cup. It's always fresh. It's quite nice. But awesome. I kind of gave up on using this for regular coffee, and I came up with, do you have your deep basket around here?
Yeah.
So I came up with this idea of, what if we had an extremely deep basket that we could put a paper filter in the bottom, and we could essentially brew filter coffee in here at virtually no pressure, just using the Decent's flow control, or say you could do it with a flare or another machine that has flow control.
Sure.
And it would mimic a no-bypass brewer, like the Trickle 8 or the Next Level, but we would use the espresso machine's ability to spit out water at whatever timing flow that you want.
Sure.
And that way you could just push a button, walk away, and a few minutes later have good filter coffee.
Yeah.
So I think we're finally there. I'm on my second round of prototypes with this basket. And I'd love to demonstrate one and taste it with you.
Absolutely. That sounds great. So what we'll do is I'll get up I'll brew like a V60. He's going to brew up a filter 3.0, and we're going to do just some tastes and comparisons, because the idea is that we're using the espresso machine to create a pour over. So instead of having a gooseneck kettle, we're using the shower screen in order to disperse evenly the water over the ground. So let's get that going. We'll come back in just a second. All right, so we just brewed up the coffees. I have the V60s here, and so what I tried to do is kind of make them right at the same TDS. So his is at about a 143, mine's at a 141. So the TDSs are essentially identical. The difference is going to be in the extraction yield. So his came out, just over 22, and mine was right at 20, just shy of 20%, which is pretty typical of a standard V60 pour. So we're going to taste these side by side. This is not to be some sort of intense scientific approach. So don't sit there and, oh, that's not a proper way of doing it. Well, I understand. But this is just to kind of get an idea. We'll talk about kind of the differences between the two and, how we think perhaps this could replace pour-overs in a cafe setting. So, yeah, let's get to tasting.
Fantastic.
So we've got those two are here we go.
All right.
I can do it like that right there.
Okay.
So we've got this here. So immediately, this one tastes a lot sweeter, with a lot more. It's more body, more sweetness. Even though they're the same TDS, the body it's a higher perceived body, I should say. I wouldn't say the weight is much bigger, but the perceived body is a lot bigger here. This one's more delicate, maybe a little bit more floral, but it's definitely weaker. On the sweet front.
The one I brewed's a little crisper. Yours, the flavor is a little more subdued, not quite as not quite as much clarity, but it is there. It is does seem more delicate, in a pleasant way.
It's like it's more contained. This one, yours, the flavor's kind of popping out.
I get a little more like orange peel, sort of a slight pithy bitterness in the V60.
Yeah, so to just kind of describe as we're doing this in this Filter 3.0 basket, you essentially have a mini no bypass brewer that has incredible heat retention. So whatever you're setting the temperature at in the machine, you're not really going to be losing much at all, because it's sealed with the gasket, right? So you're getting no bypass, as the only way for the liquid to exit is right down here. It must go through all the grounds. You have a flatbed, like a puck, just like an espresso machine, or just like an espresso puck would be. So you're getting a no bypass, more even, extraction. Whereas with the V60, you obviously have a cone. You have the ribs on the side, which promote bypass. And so you're getting a more uneven extraction. There are parts that are better extracted than others. In this one, you're going to have a gradient still, just because it's a puck. So the top versus the bottom will have different extractions, but it's a lot more even throughout than something like a V60, which I think is coming out in the crispness and the crispacity, the sweetness, and that perceived body.
Yep. To be fair, neither of us are perfectly dialed in, but it's it's but it's quite pleasant.
Yeah,
and again, my goal is get something that's really good. That is, you just push a button and walk away. And that doesn't appeal to everyone. Some people really like the show of a pour over, but I like the idea of a busy cafe having this option.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I make it this way at home every day for the past 6 months. It's so easy. I've gotten lazy.
Yeah.
The idea of doing something for 5 minutes as opposed to pushing a button.
And once it's dialed in. It's easy to go. So because I know you want to see this, we're going to have Scott. I've mixed these all up, and we have it on a little spinner table. We're going to have him taste and identify which is which. Same coffee, same TDS, different extraction, but because now he's under pressure. Under pressure. Bing, ding, ding, diggity, ding, ding. Ding, 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 diggity, ding, ding. Bow, bow.
Okay. Mine are over here.
Okay.
Okay.
V60 over there. All right. So we have V60 over here, Filter 3.0 here. We got Filter 3.0, and we got Filter 3.0. There we go.
I'm not saying it's better than a V60.
Oh, no, I know
It's
you're
more
not.
like
Yeah.
it's easy.
Yeah. Oh, these were obviously, this was saying was mine. Yeah, these two are the V60s. Did you get that on camera though? I got it first sip, baby.
I
Easy peasy.
don't necessarily think that mine taste better.
Oh, sure.
They taste a little different.
Yeah.
But always a work in progress.
Definitely.
And I love that anybody can do this.
Yes.
No puck prep, no effort.
That's the big thing.
And
And for me, a big thing is there's such inconsistency in cafes on pour overs. I mean, I don't ever order pour overs because you have someone that dials it in really well, but then you have just incredible differences between the pour speeds of all the baristas coming through, just how they're kind of agitating it, how they're pouring it. There's just a massive difference from barista to barista on pour overs. And I know people at home are probably thinking, how can there be that much difference with the pour rate coming out of your kettle? There is a massive difference. You have the difference between a laminar flow and a deep turbulence and all these different things. You can have a breakup point above the slurry. Anyway, it's getting too deep into it. I've got a lot of videos on those if you're interested that I'll link. But yes, so this is, I think, an incredible, more approachable way of offering by the cup without having to, sit and tend to a pour over for 4 or 5 minutes while there's a queue lining up. Instead, grind the coffee, put it in the deep basket, plop it in the machine, hit go, and go prep something else, which I assume is kind of one of the big reasons. Yeah.
So I've had this Suited in New York and Roast in Copenhagen have used this. Iconic in Santa Fe has been using it a bit.
Oh, nice.
Using them as a little bit of a test case to see how it's going in the real world.
Definitely.
And so far, they're all really happy with the results.
Fantastic.
And hopefully one day I can convince more cafes to use this because I think all of us would be really happy if we could walk in a cafe and get a really reliable single cup brew. Yeah.
Absolutely, that would be the goal. So yeah, that's kind of the idea behind this and the iterations leading up to what it is today. Of course, like Scott is saying, it's still a work in progress. He's still making some modifications to the basket, but keep your eyes peeled, because I think this is a really unique and hopefully very accessible thing that you'll be able to use even on non-decent machines like a Flare, or even if you turn on and off an espresso machine, it might work depending on the flow rate coming from your machine. So anyway, keep your eyes peeled for this. Thanks for coming along and brewing up and playing along with my weird antics. Yeah, so anyway, I think that's about it. I hope that you brew something tasty today, and cheers.